Have you ever sat down on a plane, looked around, and thought, how did I mess this up so badly? Knees jammed into the seat in front of you, nowhere to put your bag, no window, no aisle, and just to top it off, the bathroom line forming right next to your shoulder. Meanwhile, a few rows away, other passengers look completely comfortable. Bags tucked away, legs stretched out, already asleep before takeoff. Same plane, same ticket class. Completely different experience. And the difference almost always comes down to one thing most travelers never think about until it's too late: the seat. Airlines don't like to talk about this, but where you sit can define your entire flight. Not just comfort, but how rested you feel after landing, how fast you get off the plane, whether your bag makes it on board, and even how likely you are to feel stiff or exhausted for days afterward. This isn't about paying more or upgrading to business class. It's about understanding how seat selection really works and using that knowledge to your advantage. Before we get into it, welcome to Flywise, the channel where we help you travel smarter, avoid common traps, and make flying easier without spending more than you need to. If you've ever felt like airlines design the experience to work against you, you're not wrong. But once you know what to look for, the system becomes much easier to beat. Let's start with one of the most misunderstood areas of the aircraft, the very back of the plane. Those last rows are almost always the easiest seats to book, and there's a reason for that. Seats at the back are often restricted in ways that aren't obvious when you're clicking through a seat map. Limited recline is common, and on longer flights, being locked upright for hours puts serious strain on your lower back and neck. What makes this worse is that you're often paying the exact same fare as passengers just a few rows ahead who can recline normally and aren't dealing with constant foot traffic. And that foot traffic matters more than people realize. The rear of the cabin becomes a hallway. Passengers walking back and forth, flight attendants accessing the galley, restroom doors opening and closing nonstop. Noise, movement, and smells all concentrate there. Even if you're someone who can sleep anywhere, it's much harder when people are constantly brushing past your seat. If you ever have no choice but to sit near the back, aim one row forward from the very last row and choose the aisle. You still get faster access to the aisle, but avoid the worst of the disruption. Now, let's talk about seats that look great on paper, but often disappoint in real life. Exit rows. Airlines love selling these as premium options, highlighting legroom and positioning them as a smart upgrade. What they don't emphasize is what you give up in exchange. Underseat storage is usually removed, which means everything you normally rely on during the flight has to go overhead. If you board late or the bins fill up early, that extra legroom seat can quickly turn into a headache. There's also the responsibility factor. In an emergency, exit row passengers are expected to assist. That's not just a formality, it comes with real instructions and expectations. Some travelers are fine with that, others aren't. Temperature is another overlooked issue. Emergency exit doors aren't insulated the same way as standard cabin walls, and on long flights, that cold seeps in. Without layers, you can spend hours uncomfortable, even while everyone else feels fine. Bulkhead seats fall into a similar category. At first glance, they seem ideal. No one reclining into you, extra legroom, a clear sense of space. But the trade-offs add up quickly. Tray tables and entertainment screens are usually built into the armrests, making both smaller and harder to use. Armrests often don't lift, locking you into a narrower position than standard economy seats. And again, storage becomes an issue. Everything goes overhead, whether you want it to or not. Bulkhead seats can work if you pack light and value legroom above all else, but they're rarely the perfect solution people expect. Then there's the middle seat, universally disliked, and for good reason. You lose control of both armrests, your personal space shrinks, and every time you need to stand up, someone else has to move. What's less obvious is airflow. Middle seats tend to get poorer air circulation, which can make long flights feel stuffy and uncomfortable. However, there are rare situations where a middle seat can actually work in your favor, especially on wide-body aircraft with unique cabin layouts. The key is knowing when that exception applies and when it doesn't. Boarding strategy plays a bigger role here than most travelers realize. Airlines increasingly use boarding systems that sound efficient, but subtly work against certain seat preferences. Window middle aisle boarding, for example, often leaves aisle seat passengers boarding later than they expect. By the time they reach their row, overhead bins may already be full. That's how perfectly legal carry-ons end up gate-checked, even though you followed every rule. One workaround is booking strategically, securing overhead space first, and being flexible with seat swaps once on board. Where you sit along the length of the plane matters just as much as which side you choose. Many people assume the closer to the front, the better. In reality, there's a sweet spot. On many aircraft, seats just behind the front cluster avoid the busiest areas while still allowing faster boarding and deplaning. You're far enough from the galley and bathrooms to avoid constant activity, but close enough to exit quickly once you land. These seats also tend to experience less motion because they're closer to the aircraft's center of gravity. Aircraft type makes a huge difference as well. On wide-body planes, certain aisle seats offer exceptional balance. You get freedom to move without constantly standing for others, more predictable service patterns, and often a calmer cabin environment. These seats aren't highlighted by airlines because they don't generate extra fees, but experienced travelers know exactly where to look. Timing is everything here. The best seats often appear right when online check-in opens, and they disappear fast. This is where preparation pays off. Checking in the moment the window opens gives you access to seats that were previously blocked or held back. Having your confirmation details ready, alarms set, and a clear plan can mean the difference between upgrading your experience for free or being stuck in a seat you regret for hours. Loyalty programs can quietly help too. Even basic membership sometimes unlocks better seat options during check-in without costing anything. One of the smartest habits you can develop is researching your aircraft before booking. Not all seat maps are created equal, and airline visuals often hide important details. Some seats have limited recline. Others line up awkwardly with windows or sit next to noisy areas. Independent seat review tools expose these issues, letting you avoid problem spots before you commit. Saving screenshots of your original selection can also help if the airline changes aircraft later and you need to argue for an equivalent seat. Upgrades deserve a realistic look as well. Paying a little extra isn't always wasteful if it genuinely improves your comfort on longer flights. The key is timing. Seat upgrade prices fluctuate constantly, and airlines often lower them close to departure to fill empty premium seats. Checking upgrade options periodically can reveal opportunities that weren't there when you first booked. When you step back and look at it all, the pattern becomes clear. Airlines rely on most passengers accepting whatever seat they're assigned. They count on confusion, time pressure, and the assumption that seat choice doesn't matter that much. But it does. A few minutes of research and smart timing can transform the entire experience. The difference between arriving exhausted and stepping off the plane feeling fine often has nothing to do with ticket price. It comes down to knowing where to sit, when to check in, and how the system actually works behind the scenes. Once you understand that, flying stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling manageable again. If you've ever had a flight ruined by a bad seat, you're not alone. And now, you don't have to repeat that mistake. Travel doesn't have to be uncomfortable by default. Not if you know how to play it smart. If any part of this felt familiar, that's because most of us have learned these lessons the hard way, one uncomfortable flight at a time. The goal isn't to fly perfectly every time, it's just to make a few smarter choices that stack in your favor over the years. When you start paying attention to how airlines actually design the experience, you stop feeling unlucky and start feeling prepared. Next time you book a flight, even if it's months from now, remember that a better journey usually starts long before you step onto the plane. And once you see the difference one good decision can make, it's hard to go back to flying on autopilot. Safe travels, and I'll see you on the next one.